Just acknowledge the top guys.
Have a mimosa and relax.
You will not blow me off right now, Steve.
Steve Jobs, the eternal tech world icon, led Apple from its early steps to the pinnacle of technological innovation. Under his skilled hands, from the small iPod to the revolutionary iPhone and now the impressive Vision Pro, we can still feel Steve's endless inspiration in each product in this video. Let's explore how a tech legend built the Apple empire. On February 24th, 1955, a child who would later become a legend, Steve Jobs, was born in San Francisco. His father, Paul Reinhold Jobs, grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. He dropped out of high school to become a mechanic and joined the Coast Guard at 19. Steve's mother, Clara, was born in New Jersey and moved to San Francisco as a child. After leaving the Coast Guard, Paul met Clara, and they built a happy model family of the 1950s. However, Clara couldn't have children, so they adopted Steve. From a young age, Steve knew he was adopted. This truth had a profound impact on him. When he was 6 or 7, a neighbor asked, "Were you adopted because your real parents didn't want you?" Steve ran home crying. His adoptive parents looked him in the eye and said, "We specifically wanted you." Paul Jobs instilled in Steve confidence and a love for mechanics and repairing machines. He pointed to a workbench in the garage and said, "Steve, this will be your workbench from now on." Steve was impressed by his father's meticulousness and skill. He made everything perfectly, even the parts people usually overlook experiences in the garage. With his father, nurtured Steve's passion for creating elegantly designed products. 7 houses away lived Larry Lang, an HP engineer who profoundly influenced Steve. Once, Steve accompanied Larry and was introduced to a wireless microphone and speaker system. This was entirely different from what his father had taught, that a microphone always needed an amplifier. This was Steve's first realization that he was more intelligent than his parents. Shortly after, he knew his parents realized this too. Steve grew up between two feelings, being abandoned and being memorable. These feelings shaped Steve Jobs' character. 17 years earlier, Paul and Clara Jobs had adopted Steve and had promised to send him to college. Despite limited funds, they saved enough for his education. However, with his bold nature, Steve joked about not going to college. His parents strongly opposed it, but Steve insisted on attending Reed College in Portland, one of the most expensive liberal arts schools in the US. Finally, they had to concede to his request: if not Reed, then nowhere. At Reed, Steve immersed himself in the spiritual world, profoundly influenced by Ram Dass's Be Here Now. He was passionate about Zen Buddhism and pursued it wholeheartedly. The book Diet for a Small Planet sparked his vegetarian habits, and the mucusless diet healing system led him to believe that eating fruits and vegetables would prevent harmful mucus secretion. Steve even gave up grains and bread. These behaviors reflected Steve's intense quest for enlightenment. However, he soon grew frustrated with the required courses at Reed. He only wanted to study what he liked, such as dance classes, to satisfy his creative mind and meet girls. Surprisingly, Reed agreed to his request, allowing him to audit classes and stay in the dorms without paying tuition. From then on, Steve was free to study whatever he wanted. One of the courses that refined his sense of aesthetics and influenced Apple's products later was calligraphy. Steve shared, "I learned about typefaces, varying the space between different letter combinations, and what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating." Stephen Wozniak, a high school friend of Steve Jobs, was an indispensable companion. Though Woz was 5 years older than Steve, they shared a passion for technology and music. Woz was a master of electronic design, far ahead of Steve when he was still tinkering with carbon microphones. If Steve was the soul, then Woz was the heart of Apple. In the 1960s, America experienced a technology boom. Electronics companies, microprocessor manufacturers, and video game designers created a new culture. Simultaneously, a counterculture emerged, opposing technology. Initially, tech enthusiasts and rebellious youth didn't get along. But by the early 70s, computers began to be seen as symbols of individuality and freedom. In January 1975, the first personal computer, the Altair, was introduced. 2 months later, Wozniak saw this machine. The Homebrew Computer Club, where technology and counterculture intersected, held its first meeting featuring the Altair on March 5, 1975. Wozniak was captivated and began designing a terminal connected to a remote mini computer, integrating a keyboard and screen. the entire idea of the personal computer came to me. He said, "That night, I started sketching out Apple I." When Steve Jobs saw Woz's computer, he was deeply impressed. He began working on improving his memory. While Wozniak believed in the club's philosophy of helping others, Jobs didn't agree with giving away Woz's invention for free. This was their difference. Woz was modest, while Steve was ambitious. Ultimately, Steve persuaded Woz and created the first commercial computers together. These friendly, fully integrated designs became essential for every household. With Woz's technical skills and Jobs' vision, they ushered in a new era of personal computing. Apple Computer. Who could think of such a peculiar combination? But that was Steve Jobs. This name reflected his personality, a strict vegetarian who valued friendliness and liveliness, even in a lifeless machine. On April 1st, 1976, Apple Computer was founded by three shareholders: Steve Jobs, Stephen Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. However, Wayne soon left, leaving Steve and Woz to steer the Apple ship. Woz took charge of electronic engineering, while Jobs handled business and marketing. Apple I was first introduced at the Homebrew Computer Club. Woz presented its superiority with an easy-to-use keyboard and integrated components. Few people paid attention, but Paul Terrell, owner of Byte Shop, was impressed and ordered 50 units after speaking with Jobs. Apple had its first order. Jobs' house in Los Altos became the 50 Apple I circuit board assembly workshop. The team participated, including Jobs, Woz, Cotillier, Jobs' ex-girlfriend Elizabeth Holmes, and his sister Patty. Steve didn't just produce 50 units for the order, he made 50 more to sell to friends and 100 for retail. The wholesale price was $500 each, but Jobs raised the retail price to $666.66, causing a dispute with Woz, who believed they should only cover production costs. Steve wanted high profits, with the $666.66 price being 3 times the production cost. The success of Apple I was not just because it was one of the first personal computers on the market, but also due to Jobs' sales and marketing strategy. The controversial virtual price of $666.66 reflected Jobs' strategy, creating value through the product and its marketing. This helped Apple become a groundbreaking company, challenging conventions and offering products that were not only powerful but also sophisticated in design and user experience. Steve Jobs and his team learned from the experience of Apple I to create Apple I, a breakthrough in the personal computer industry. Jobs understood the importance of a complete all-in-one computer. As a result, the Apple I was launched successfully, selling nearly 6 million units over 16 years, ushering in a new era for personal computers. Apple quickly became a pioneer in Silicon Valley, with Steve Jobs serving as chairman and CEO. However, the growing responsibilities made him increasingly angry and prone to erratic behavior. Jobs did not hesitate to call his employees' work garbage if it did not meet his standards. Jobs maintained a strict vegetarian diet, believing it allowed him to forgo regular bathing. Occasionally, he would relieve stress by washing his feet in the toilet, a peculiar habit. Tension also arose in the relationship between Jobs and Woz. Woz disliked Jobs' childishness and the discord he caused. While designing the Apple I, Woz insisted on having 8 slots for user expansion, while Jobs only wanted 2. Ultimately, Woz's idea prevailed, but he felt his authority was overshadowed. Jobs' desire to control Apple and his approach to wielding power worried the board of directors. It was possible that Jobs had lost control under the pressure of Apple's rapid growth, or this was his inherent nature. In 1985, Apple had become a giant in the electronics world with enchanting devices like the Apple I, Lisa, and Mac. However, success took work and was riddled with conflicts and disagreements. The Macintosh was born amidst these conflicts. With his famous reality distortion field, Steve Jobs created a computer that was elegantly designed on the outside and robust on the inside. Jobs wanted everything completed by January 1982, a year ahead of schedule. The Mac development team thought this was impossible, but they got caught up in Jobs' ambition. Once Jobs entered engineer Kenyon's office and complained that the operating system took too long to boot. If you could save a person's life by reducing boot time by 10 seconds, would you do it? Jobs asked. Kenyon agreed, and a few weeks later, the Mac booted 28 seconds faster. Many believe this behavior stemmed from Jobs' stubborn childhood, where he used his strong will to get what he wanted. Jobs instilled trust and passion in each individual, stimulating creativity and encouraging his team to see what was possible, not just what was present. Wozniak recalled Jobs' reality distortion field was evident when he told me to design the breakout game in a few days. It was impossible, but somehow he made it happen. This ability was also evident in the creation of the iPhone when Apple introduced a multi-touch device, a foreign technology, while competitors were still loyal to physical keyboards. Jobs convinced Corning Glass to produce Gorilla Glass for the first iPhone, even though the glass had been abandoned. Corning gathered its best scientists and engineers to make Jobs' request a reality. Steve Jobs was right, his reality distortion field was compelling. However, this also distorted his soul. His obsession with perfection guided every decision, but also created many conflicts. Jobs pursued perfection in Macintosh and ran the company, which was impossible to achieve simultaneously. Those who worked closely with Steve, including Wozniak, noticed this issue from the launch of Apple I. Apple needed an experienced chairman to grow, not a Steve who would often get angry or cry during debates. Tension between Jobs and John Sculley, Apple's CEO at the time, continually escalated. This tension signaled major storms ahead for Apple and Steve Jobs. In 1983, John Sculley was appointed CEO of Apple, invited by Steve Jobs from PepsiCo to help Apple transition. On his first visit to Apple, Sculley was impressed by the rustic and relaxed work culture, aligning with Jobs' style. The two quickly became soulmates. However, Steve soon realized it was all an illusion. He felt Sculley needed to understand the products and strive to grasp the core aspects of Apple's devices. Conversely, Sculley thought Steve focused too much on trivial details, believing this was counterproductive. They also clashed over how to treat employees. When Macintosh was disappointed by only achieving 10% of the projected sales, Steve became irate and blamed everyone, venting his anger at them. Meanwhile, Sculley preferred to avoid confrontation, maintain harmony, and care about relationships. Tension escalated as Jobs and Sculley vied for control over the Mac development division. Realizing his mistake in hiring Sculley, Steve conspired to overthrow him with the board's support. But it was too late. A year earlier, Jobs and Sculley flew to Cambridge, Massachusetts to visit Edwin Land, the founder of Polaroid and Steve's idol. Jobs remarked all he did was change millions of people, and they kicked him out of his own company. Now, Sculley was doing the same to Jobs. On May 24, 1985, an Apple board meeting took place. Jobs' coup attempt was exposed, leading to a confrontation with Sculley. Steve insisted Sculley didn't understand Apple and should leave. "I wanted you here to help me grow, and you've done nothing." Under Steve's pressure, Sculley lost his composure and gambled big. He organized a board vote me or Steve. Who do you choose? Steve recalled. He was cunning. "Only a fool would vote for me." Indeed, despite everyone's affection for Jobs, they chose Sculley. Jobs was ousted from his own company. He walked out of the room and no one followed. In the following days, Jobs stayed home playing Bob Dylan's music, especially the song "The Times They Are A-Changin'." In Greek mythology, Prometheus was a unique deity who created humanity from clay, imparted knowledge, and brought divine fire to humankind. This act enraged Zeus, who punished him by binding him to a rock where an eagle ate his liver daily. Ultimately, Prometheus was rescued by Hercules. If anyone can empathize with Prometheus, it is Steve Jobs. Just as the Titan brought fire to humanity, Jobs introduced groundbreaking technologies that transformed how we live, work, and communicate. Both faced opposition and punishment from higher powers, Prometheus from Zeus and Jobs from Apple's board of directors. Jobs loved his products as Prometheus loved humanity. Both endured suffering due to their choices and actions, yet they are remembered as innovators and bringers of light. Steve Jobs faced dark times, from being ousted from Apple to the challenges of building Next and Pixar. However, like Prometheus, Jobs also had a chance to return. Elvis's comeback couldn't have been more emotional, said Jim Carlton of the Wall Street Journal. The audience stood, engulfed in applause and cheers as Jobs returned to Apple after over a decade to save the company. Since Jobs' departure, Apple had lost its creative spark, revenues declined, and fierce competition from Microsoft and other PC manufacturers plunged Apple into crisis. The company needed new inspiration and a strong leader with a bold vision. Who else but Steve Jobs? Initially, Jobs returned as a part-time advisor, but his voice still carried significant weight. The Think Different campaign was his first considerable impact upon returning to Apple. It was unique from its name, using different as a noun. Print ads with black and white portraits of historical figures alongside the Apple logo, and the words Think Different left a lasting impression. Steve rekindled the creative flame that Apple had lost. He became interim CEO in 1997 and officially took the role in 2000. With power in hand, Jobs slashed numerous unproductive projects, focusing on a few potentially groundbreaking products. In 1998, the iMac was launched with a distinctive design and vibrant colors, symbolizing innovation and revitalizing Apple's spirit. After the iMac, Jobs led Apple through new ventures like the iPod, iTunes, iPhone, and iPad. Each product opened a new era, reinforcing Apple's leadership position and transforming it into one of the world's most valuable brands. Conclusions about Steve Jobs are no easy task, as his greatness surpasses what words can describe. However, if one were to choose an image to represent him, it would be the yin-yang symbol from the book Be Here Now, which Steve often pondered over. At first glance, the symbol depicts contradiction. Similar to how Steve perceived the world, a product is extraordinary or garbage, you are either a genius or a failure. He once criticized former President Obama, saying, "He doesn't want to hurt people's feelings or make them mad. Yes, that's not a problem I have." Jobs were more substantial than that, driven by a unified ideal. This expression of strength motivated his employees. Jobs elicited excellence from those around him by challenging them, sometimes to the extreme, creating an environment where everyone had to strive to become their best selves. Beyond contradiction, the yin-yang symbol also evokes the importance of harmony. Steve was a blend of a brilliant engineer and a true artist. His hands turned raw technology into elegant devices. Apple inherited this spirit in every product, from the curves of the iPhone to the fonts displayed. They embodied Steve's character passion, perfection, quirkiness, artistry, and boldness. Jobs was also a master marketer and a storyteller par excellence. He knew how to create a narrative around a product, transforming it from an inanimate object into an emotional experience, deeply connecting with customers. The 1984 Macintosh ad is a prime example, with the audience jumping, shouting, and punching the air in excitement. But stripping away the glamour, Steve Jobs remained a child with a burning desire to create, passionate about crafting groundbreaking products. On August 24, 2011, Jobs accepted that he could no longer continue as Apple's CEO and handed the reins to Tim Cook. In his final chapters, Jobs battled cancer, yet he still contemplated the technology he could improve. So what is Steve Jobs' legacy? Each person will have their perspective when approaching their life story. People will remember Jobs as a great inventor, a true artist, or a boy with an insatiable passion. In an interview with Walter Isaacson on the evening of August 24th, the day he stepped down as Apple CEO, Jobs said, "I've had a promising career, a fortunate life, I've done all I could.